Now, what's interesting about it, though, is that the last couple of years, it's looked worse. The outside world, people, we've known each other for many, many years, right? You wouldn't have known that I was way worse off 10 years ago than I am now, even though now you see me in ways where it might be visible. And that's been probably the biggest part of this learning journey for me, is kind of, I mean, it's been fabulous to at least understand, but I don't even want to say accepting my limitations, but sort of accepting my reality has been huge for me. So I am never going to be your person who pulls an all-nighter. One all-nighter and I'm going to be useless for about 3 weeks, like useless, like in bed, unable to do anything. So I've had to learn to calibrate. I don't have a body that's going to let me push forward or keep going when I'm on empty, or any of those things that we all have a tendency to do. But the blessing of that and sort of learning about that has been, I've learned to build in that margin, and it's really something that would be healthy, is healthy for all of us, right? Like none of us are meant to be working from the minute we wake up at night in the morning to when we go to bed at night, or at least thinking about work or stressing about work. Or, when I spend time with my kids, I try to be present with my kids. And when I'm working, I try to be all there working. And when I'm taking care of my body, I'm taking care of my body. But I'm not saying it's easy, but I think that certainly dealing with those physical challenges has, I believe, gotten me to some of those realizations earlier in life than I might have had I not faced the same set of issues.
Welcome to the RockstarsRocking podcast, powered by Voluntary Disruption, a show dedicated to people who are crushing their business and life goals. These are bite-sized conversations with leading rock stars in their respective industry who are pumped to share their story to help drive you to the next level. So, are you ready to rock? Speaking of rock stars, here's your host, Eric Silverman.
Hey, rock stars, welcome back to another episode of RockstarsRocking, where I only have the best of the best rock stars in all various types of industries come on my show. And I'm super pumped, super fired up, super excited to have my good friend Jen Berman, CEO, Benefits Compliance Maven over at MZQ Consulting. In the Baltimore area, coincidentally. So I guess we could technically be in person, but we're all busy and this is just so much easier these days, right? What's up, Jen? How are you?
I'm great, Eric. Thanks so much for having me. I've been, waiting to make it on here for, it feels like ages and ages.
I know, right? Well, I'm excited to have you. And, I feel like you just have such a unique story, if I can be so bold to say. I mean, you're an attorney by trade. You went to school to be an attorney. But did you go to school did you wake up one day as a high school student and say, Mom, Dad, I want to be an attorney? Okay, great, daughter. But I want to do insurance and benefits compliance. That sounds just super exciting. No, is that what happened? Like, can you tell us that story?
That's not exactly how it went. I was always a little precocious as a kid. So okay. When I was 8, I announced, what does every 8-year-old want to be? Like, I don't know, baseball player, waitress, ballet dancer. I wanted to be a Supreme Court justice.
I love that.
A great plan at 8.
That's awesome.
Why not? Seemed, really good idea at the time. So
right.
I did know the whole time growing up that I wanted to be a lawyer. That was like my whole heart, mind was set on that. And I got to law school and
hold on. I'm time out. Do you remember anything as a child that made you say you wanted to be a lawyer? Does it run in your family? Did you watch some movie that struck your interest? Like, where'd that come from?
Yeah. So my mom's a paralegal. So I did have that sort of exposure, but her grandfather, my great grandfather, was like a very, very famous criminal defense attorney.
Oh, nice.
Like
Matlock.
Not like Matlock, more like some of those movies you may have seen. I met some interesting characters when he passed away. We'll just leave it there. But it was pretty cool. So I had a lot of exposure growing up. So I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I was like super, super determined. And I was like on this path. And I, went high school thing, undergrad. And then I actually sub-matriculated into law school. So I went even faster. So I started law school before I had even graduated from undergrad. And I got there and I very quickly learned that I didn't like legal writing. I was like bored from like the type of writing that you do when you like write a brief and like you're litigating cases. I was like, I like to argue plenty and I like to speak and all that stuff, but I don't like fighting. So I was like, uh-oh, here I am. I'm in law school and I don't like to fight with people. This is not going to end well, right? And what I learned was that I was really good at like regulatory work. So any sort of work where there was like a set of rules and we had to then apply those rules to the situation. So
Are you a rule follower yourself?
no. But I like to study them and I like to understand where they are. And, the better you understand the rules, the more that you can, follow them while still accomplishing what you want to accomplish.
Sure.
So I was into that sort of space. Anything was sort of a rules-based regulatory law. I knew I wanted to do that. And I also had a big interest in sort of the health policy sector. So it's like, all right, so I like health policy and I like rules-based law. Like, what am I going to do with this? Because at the time, if you were a health lawyer, health law was like mass torts. You were like suing pharmaceutical companies or representing pharmaceutical companies. Like, it's not what I want to do. And found employee benefits. I was like, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to work on people's health plans. I'm going to do like all of these tax things. Like, this is right up my alley. I'm so excited. And I went and I interviewed and I got a job straight out of law school at a big firm doing employee benefits work. And I got there and I was so excited. And I got to freeze pension plans.
Oh, exciting.
Not even, I mean, it was, even as crazy as we are to be ERISA lawyers, I got there and I was like, I thought I was going to do health law, like retirement plans. Like, this is awful. It was like the dregs. And I got into it, but I was really interested at the time in things like COBRA and HIPAA and like, all right, how does all this fit together and how do health plans work? But I graduated law school and started my first big law job in 2006. So the timing ended up being pretty good for me. So I spent those first few years kind of getting my feet under me, learning ERISA, doing a lot of pension plan, retirement plan work, had a couple kids in the process. And then it was suddenly 2010. And I don't know if anybody remembers who's listening, but there's some stuff that happened in 2010 in our industry.
Just some stuff.
Just some stuff. There was this big law that passed. So obviously I'm talking about the ACA, which passed in March of 2010. That was just in time for me to be on bed rest with my second child.
Yikes.
So I sat at home for the summer of 2010 and I read the ACA, all of it.
Good Lord.
Yeah, I mean, there's no accounting for judgment.
You read Yellow Pages too?
This was great. I mean, you had to cross-reference. There were 3 laws on top of each other. I don't know if anybody remembers this or anybody was crazy enough to know it, but you had to, it was like a jigsaw puzzle. And I was into it. And so I spent, I was home for about, 9 or 10 weeks before my daughter was born, and then her maternity leave, and I just learned the ACA, and that sort of laid the foundation for what I've been up to ever since.
So let me ask you a question, right? Because we have a lot of folks who listen to my show, and I'm very thankful and appreciative of all of them. But a lot of them may have kids that are in middle school, high school, even starting in college, and they still don't know what they want to do or be if they ever grow up. Notice I said if. What about their kids that want to be an attorney? Now, forget benefits for a second, but what's some advice you would give a friend of yours if they had a kid who's in high school and they're thinking about going into the legal field? What's something tangible that you might share with them that you've been able to learn over the years from experience?
I think that it's a big space, and that's something sort of important to be cognizant of. There's a lot of different things you can do with a law degree. But then I also think there's a lot of people, and saw this throughout my entire legal education too, who go towards it because they think that that's where they're supposed to be. Like, it's one of these big professions, right? So you should be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer, right? And they're like, well, I don't like math and I don't like science, so I guess I'm gonna be a lawyer. There's plenty of other things out there to do. So, I mean, usually when I talk to young people who are like, I want to be a lawyer, sort of sit down and say, okay, what is it about being a lawyer that interests you and why? And there are some phenomenal opportunities in the legal profession. Um, but it's also, I say, I mean, it's certainly hard work too, and I don't want to detract from it. It's a very prescribed way of thinking. There's a way that we learn to look at the world that works for some people and doesn't for others. So,
Well, yeah, and you have to have a passion for the law. You have to have a passion for all aspects. But you know, I kind of, and this is going to be a weird example, but I look at having a law degree, and I don't have one, and I look at having a business degree, and I know you have an MBA. I look at those things as the gateway drug to opportunity. Right? It's crazy, but is that a cool way to think of it? Right? I mean, it opens up so many doors. Whether you use your law degree every day, I mean, I have a good friend, huge, big friend of mine, my family. He's a lawyer by trade. He practiced law for a decade, and he got bored and he left law, but that helped pivot him into an opportunity that changed his life that he loves doing. And he doesn't use his law degree ever anymore.
yeah, and that's true. I mean, it definitely, I think education, advanced ed, whatever you're doing, it does. It opens a lot of doors. It creates a lot of opportunity. I don't think it's the only way to those opportunities. I think that there's a lot to be said for, just hard work and perseverance, whether you go that sort of traditional academic route or not. I have some incredibly, incredibly talented people on the MCQ team who really didn't take the academic path and are
Sure.
phenomenal at what they do. Um, the advanced education certainly is a leg up. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's helped along the way. I do joke a lot. I'm entirely overeducated. And I am in some ways. I mean, I don't need the degrees that I have to do what I do. But I think that having them is probably reflective of the personality that allows me to do what I do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I love how you use the word. I've heard you say before. You say you're extraordinarily overeducated, but is there such a thing? Yeah, I guess it depends on who you're asking, right? If you're asking a parent about their kid, maybe they'd say no, there's no such thing. If you're asking the kid going through it, maybe they say there is such a thing. So it depends on who you're talking to. But I want to talk about the MBA side. So what made you go and get? Because you did the legal side first, right? So
Yes.
what was it was it the drive within you that you wanted to be an entrepreneur, you wanted to open up and be the CEO of some company USA? Is it, hey, I'm going to go get my MBA because I know it'll help me? Like, where did that part come from?
Exact opposite.
Okay.
I was a lawyer first, and I practiced big law firm out of law school, was there for a little over 7 years, started my own practice, and then started MZK Consulting back in 2014 with my dad, who's a systems engineer. And initially our first product was ACA reporting, and we built and designed our own ACA reporting process and module and technology end to end. And so that kind of all just, happened. And I suddenly was the CEO of a successful company. And now it's 2016. And I'm like, oh, whoa, what just happened here? Like ACA came and I had this idea, and suddenly I have this whole team of people, and I'm running a company, and I don't even know what a P&L is. Like, what am I doing?
Oh my gosh.
Right. And so I think it's, different people have different coping mechanisms. Mine, I think my number one Clifton strength is learner. Like I have to, I seek to understand the world around me. So here I was, and running a successful company. I was like, I got to know everything about being a business leader. Like, and so at the time, Loyola had an executive MBA program here in Baltimore, and it was, I probably could have done some like training or gone to a 1 week class, but I'm not. I just like, oh no, I'm gonna go get a full MBA, right? And so I enrolled and went through at a cohort. I think we started around 25 people, and maybe 16 or 17 of us graduated, and spent 2.5 years every Saturday from 8:30 in the morning till about 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon in class and getting an MBA.
Wow. You're a glutton for punishment, but I love
Well,
why
I'm
you
also
did it.
married to a saint.
Okay. Yeah, well, yeah, of course. A biking saint. That's another
Yeah,
story.
it's
Um, but I love you threw yourself into leadership, right? You threw yourself into entrepreneurship, and you realized quickly that you didn't know, as to use your words, you didn't even know what a P&L was per se. So you took the initiative to figure it out, and you went the academic route. Not everybody does that. A lot of people will figure it out, but they'll just do it through trial and tons of error and by accident, right? But can you talk about the leadership side for a second? So again, whether they're in employee benefits or insurance or not, those listening here, talk about what it was like to start leading a team. Do you consider yourself a natural born leader? Were you always that person in school growing up that took the bull by the horns and you wanted to be in charge of the group project? Or was leadership something you had to learn?
Um, it is absolutely something that I had to learn.
Okay.
Um, but, and interestingly, kind of both ends of the dichotomy you just said are true. Like, I did have a tendency growing up to sort of take it on and take it on myself and do it. And, you want something done right, you do it yourself type of a
Right.
mentality. That's not leadership. And that's something that I had to learn very quickly, right? So I have this natural instinct to dive in and do everything myself. Um, and that wasn't going to work at scale. And that's not the way to build a successful company. It is very much about true leadership. I mean, talked in school, and I've talked many times throughout my career about management versus leadership. And, management's fine. You keep the trains on the track, you get things done that need to get done. But for me, at least, true leadership is, where you can step back and you're facilitating, a team, and they're the rock stars. And I have been lucky enough, in my career, as you know, I have an incredible team of rock stars, that I have the privilege to work with every day, and learning how to support them has been, probably the most fulfilling part of this entire adventure.
I love that. And I love how you give credit to your team, because that's a marquee component of a very high-end successful leader. Is always giving credit where it's due. And I don't know about you, but I've had leaders, quote unquote, and I use that term loosely, mentors, I use that term loosely, that didn't do that. They would take all the credit themselves and never give credit where it's due. And that is one surefire way to get your people to quit on you, mentally, while they're still working for you, and then eventually they will leave totally. So I really respect that and I appreciate that. I know your team does too. Let me ask you a question. You have been written up all over the country in Forbes and Inc. magazine, Yahoo Money, and Business Insider, the Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg Law, Forbes. I mean, good God, this list of it goes on. New York Post. This is insane. The business journals all locally, the Baltimore Sun, and not to mention all the TV stations you've talked to, the Washington Times. How does that come about, right? NPR, Newsweek. I'm seeing this all here, and I just forgot how much of a laundry list it was. But I guess here's the question. It's one thing to be an expert, right? But if I'm in the benefits insurance world listening today, or I'm not, right? I'm just an entrepreneur and I love hearing stories. What has this type of exposure done for your business, and what would you recommend somebody do to try to start getting in that world?
Sure. I mean, I think first of all, it's been really fun, right? It's always fun to do those sorts of things, and I think it's certainly, um, helped us tremendously from a marketing perspective for people to be able to see, that we have that type of expertise on our team. But really, I think that sort of certainly the success that we've had in the PR space, and we've worked with consultants and things like that to help us. But it comes from really knowing your craft, like fundamentally being super, super comfortable with it and being able to apply it to situations. So, most of that exposure that you've talked about has been over the past couple of years. And quite honestly, the world's been flipped upside down and shaken up and, spit back out again how many times, in this industry over the past couple of years. And I know that success, in the press and just with respect to all of our clients has been very much about being, sort of knowing our stuff and then having the ability to be flexible and agile, in applying a whole bunch of changing concepts, to whatever's going on in the marketplace at any time.
So how do you stay up on all the stuff? I mean, it's constantly changing. My God. I mean, are you just constantly your iPad is there, you're reading, are you reading newspapers, magazines all the time? Do you have a team of people that are saying, "Hey, you should check this out, you should read that?" Like, what's going on?
Well, I do read a lot, but it's not newspapers and magazines. I mean, I read those too, but I am predominantly in primary source materials. So for me, it's, reading the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. It's
So
going through
reading
and going,
actual law.
oh yeah, reading the
Yeah.
actual law themselves, reading the regulations that are coming out, reading the FAQs that are coming from the Department of Labor, the actual material, not the digested version of it. And I mean,
Sure.
we pride ourselves on our ability to digest that information and share it with the audience. So my job is to be the expert on these legal issues. So to be that, I have to read the original stuff, and then, but it's not just about picking it up and reading it. And that's something, I mean, I when I'm training folks, I tell them all the time, they're like, I just read the same thing you read. How come you knew it was this and I didn't know anything? Well, there's also 15 years experience to back that up, right? So it's not just reading the most, all the new content. It's understanding at the deepest level how the existing fabric works, so that when something changes, you can say, okay, all that changed is right here and maybe over here. And now I got to piece those two things together, and I got to take these facts and I got to give you an answer. So, one of the big issues that has been talked about ad nauseum lately is vaccine mandates and employer vaccine mandates. So, we know change is coming in that space. The president has told us it's coming, and, there's going to be more and more rules and regulations around that. Well, we also know that there's going to be exemptions, and those exemptions have to do with, religious rights, and they have to do with medical standards and disability standards. Well, those rules, the religious rights rules, the medical standard rules, that's not new law, that's old law. How it's going to apply is a new application. So it's a lot about layering on an existing base of knowledge. And also, like, my kids know, like, what it means that, oh my gosh, 432 pages of regulations just got issued. They'll roll their eyes and be like, but mom, I wanted to go to the mall this weekend. They get it. I'm like, well, I did too, but mommy's got to read.
Mommy's got to pay the bills.
Mommy's got to pay the bills.
So if you don't mind, I wanted to switch completely, because this is something that I know has had a profound impact on your life, and I'm sure your business too over the years. Is and please, by all means, you don't have to get granular in detail, but I know you've gone through some health challenges over the last many years, few years, but I want to talk about the adversity and the adaptability that you've had to have, not just on a personal note, but your entire business. I mean, you have yourself, your whole staff relies on you, or the brand and the face of the company, for lack of a better term, in a good way. So what has that done, and how have you had to adapt, if you don't mind talking about it?
I don't mind talking about it. And so I've had health challenges really my entire life. And
Oh, okay.
they were just diagnosed for the first time a couple of years ago as a genetic condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is predominantly a connective tissue disorder. So it explained a whole bunch of really crazy, disparate medical issues. One of the most visible and easy to understand being that my ligaments don't work correctly. So I have to basically support my whole body based on just my muscles, and that creates a whole series of interesting adventures. And there's regular physical therapy, and I do intensive Pilates, and I have to walk in a pool all the time. And as many folks who are listening who may have met me or see me at a conference, means that I'm in a wheelchair part-time. And that's been hard. Now, what's interesting about it, though, is that the last couple of years, it's looked worse. The outside world, we've known each other for many, many years, right? You wouldn't have known that I was way worse off 10 years ago than I am now, even though now you see me in ways where it might be visible. And that's been probably the biggest part of this learning journey for me, is kind of, I mean, it's been fabulous to at least understand. But I don't even want to say accepting my limitations, but sort of accepting my reality has been huge for me. So I am never going to be your person who pulls an all-nighter. One all-nighter, and I'm going to be useless for about 3 weeks, like useless, like in bed, unable to do anything.
Mm.
So I've had to learn to calibrate. I don't have a body that's going to let me push forward or keep going when I'm on empty or any of those things that we all have a tendency to do. But the blessing of that and sort of learning about that has been, I've learned to build in that margin, and it's really something that would be healthy, is healthy for all of us, right? Like none of us are meant to be working from the minute we wake up at night in the morning to when we go to bed at night, or at least thinking about work or stressing about work. Or, when I spend time with my kids, I try to be present with my kids. And when I'm working, I try to be all there working. And when I'm taking care of my body, I'm taking care of my body. But I'm not saying it's easy, but I think that certainly dealing with those physical challenges has, I believe, gotten me to some of those realizations earlier in life than I might have had I not faced the same set of issues.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, and again, you've been pretty open about it. The question about what you're going through and how you just, I guess, like you said, you dealt with it your whole life. You just didn't know what it was called, or it wasn't diagnosed. Talk about from that perspective, because everybody has something, right? So talk about, was it, I guess, talk about your comfort level for talking about it. As soon as you were diagnosed, was it something that you were kind of like, oh crap? Or was it like, okay, now I can attack it? Like, I don't even know if that's a good question, but some people, it takes them months or years to come out of their shell to admit that here's the problem and now we need to face it.
Took me a little while. Took me a little while. Not as much to talk about it. I've always been, and I think that this is just a personality trait too. Like I'm a pretty public person. I'm not super private about things. I'm certainly willing to talk about what I'm going through, and I've always been. But to really understand and accept it was much harder. And I am not the least bit ashamed to share, like I worked very intensively with a therapist who actually specialized in, believe it or not, there are these specialties, professional women with chronic illnesses.
Absolutely.
Once a week for 18, 19 months. And I needed every second of it. And, what was interesting for me in that process and things that I never would have known, like, I have medical story after medical story that was, crazy, and all of these ridiculous things happened. And I was probably one of the ones that is most impactful on me. I once had sepsis, and I was in a situation where an urgent care sent me home, and I turned to my husband and said, we got to go to the emergency room. This is not the right answer. And thank God we did, because the emergency room said, like, you have sepsis, and had you gone home, you might not have made it back here.
Sure.
So what's interesting is when I sat down to really do counseling about this, and we got to the topic of trauma, I said, I've never had anything traumatic happen to me. And I've been blessed in my life to not have many of the same sort of traumas that other people have been through. But I didn't recognize medical trauma at the time as a category, which it is a real one. But that trauma and everybody, I mean, you're absolutely right, Eric. Everyone has their stuff, right? There's not a person out there. I've learned the older I get, the more I get to know people. Everyone has their stories. And it's in really facing those things and understanding them. And it's going to be different from person to person. But there's a lot of liberation there.
Sure. Well, I mean, look, my wife, as you know, she's a private practice psychotherapist, mental health counselor, master's degree, the whole nine. And she's never been busier. And she does not have a specific vertical such as what you talked about, but she's told me that those types of verticals and more certainly exist. And, I don't know how she does what she does, because she has her own stuff to deal with. And then ultimately, has to help save the day for others. But I'm a big proponent, and what I really love about what you're talking about is that you're open about it. It was not that way years ago, not necessarily for you, but it just stuff people didn't talk about. Nowadays, it's open. It's on LinkedIn. It's on Facebook. It's everywhere. People are open. Yeah, see my therapist here. I do this. I couldn't live without it. Like, it should be talked about, because that's the only way, in my opinion, and I guess you may agree, is that's the only way you're gonna normalize it, for lack of a better term.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I really do think that it's important that we have those dialogues.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me bring this back around full circle to more fun and exciting stuff when it comes to benefits and insurance. I've had the pleasure of being on webinars and with you, and I've also seen you many times on stage at various conferences throughout the industry. And what I really like about you is how you make benefits compliance fun. You make it's hard to say that, like, and pardon me here, I'm going to use a term that isn't so PC, but I even made a post on LinkedIn before, because I truly agree. You make benefits compliance sexy, appealing. You make it actually something that people can digest, which I think is so mission critical, as opposed to other folks that are in your side of the industry, that they're boring as all hell. Like, it's just like listening to paint dry or watching paint dry. It's like, it reminds me of Ben Stein in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And you found that way. I think it's just you being you, your personality, but you have that way of making it more appealing and thus digestible, which I truly believe is why you've been growing so fast. Is that natural for you? Is that just your personality? Or are you putting on an act? I know the answer there, but talk to me about that.
Yeah. Well, you do know the answer, because you know me personally. No, the person that you see on stage is, or on that webinar, is me, right? So what you're seeing or hearing is just me talking about something that I'm passionate about.
I mean, I love it. You're sassy and you're quick and you're sarcastic and you're fun, and you bring levity and humor to it's like, if you ever find a funny CPA or accounting, grab that person, right? That's few and far between.
Well, I appreciate it. And I mean, I think that, more than anything, um, it was almost the reverse, and sort of embracing my own authenticity. Like, that is me at a cocktail party too, right? I mean,
Right.
I'm not, please note that I'm not necessarily going to be talking about in-depth mental health parity issues at a cocktail party. I could be,
Hope
I
not.
could be,
You could be.
it happens. It could be, but sometimes it's about horseback riding competitions, and I don't know what else, whatever's going on in my life at that moment. But
Right.
that is just who I am. It was actually kind of like the reverse. What I had to work out was letting go of who I thought I was supposed to be. Right. So I spent all these years, I was big law, and I wore suits to work, and I was very prim and structured, and, going about trying to create some image or error that, the lawyer has to be the authority figure.
Right.
And I was just totally uncomfortable. I was like, I don't know this person. This is
It
not
wasn't
who I
you.
am. It wasn't me. Um, and then some point along the way, I think I know that it had to do with leaving sort of the big law environment and starting my own thing. I said, you know what? I'm going to do this in the way that I am comfortable. And I believe that what I have to share is going to be useful and relevant to people. But, it's not always the right thing. Sometimes people are like, why are you up there cracking jokes about HIPAA? HIPAA's serious. And I'm like, yeah, but hippos are cute. So, but it's also about the fact that I am like, yeah, but hippos are cute. And my HIPAA speech has hippos. I like hippos. And, but those are about, that's a learning mechanism too, right? Like, that's about how human psychology and how we learn. And we're not all necessarily going to learn in the same way. And so what we try to do at MZQ is make the information digestible and accessible. So I don't think, okay, we're gonna keep it a secret, okay? It's gonna be just me and you, and
Of course.
okay, no one else to hear. From my perspective, compliance is not all that hard, okay? And everybody out there in this industry, this is the hardest thing ever. Okay, not gonna lie, when you read that statute, if you don't know how to read that statute, it reads like Greek. I know it reads like Greek, okay? I get it. But these are not concepts that are so inaccessible to people. And I think that there's a lot of folks who do things similar to me, who define their value in understanding this secret that nobody else understands. Whereas for me, my mission is to share this information in a way that will make it understandable. And hopefully that makes health plans be better operated and has a positive impact on the participants. And overall, that's how I give back to the world. It's a little bit of a line to get there, but that's my superpower. That's what I can bring to the table.
Yeah, but that really is the secret sauce. That's the marquee difference that I think sets you guys apart with your clients and when prospects see you for who you are, transparent and authentic and open to sharing all this stuff and then some. Again, I mean, I told you I have broker client partners myself who they when I start talking about stuff that you do and I want to introduce you, they're like, yeah, we have some lady or some guy on retainer and it's insane, multiple hundreds of dollars, if not more per hour. And you can always tell they feel like we're wasting their time, and you almost feel like they're rolling their eyes every time we ask a question, and it's not personal, and we hate talking to them. And I'm like, wow, you're describing such a pleasant experience. Like, I'm so glad to hear you pay them so much money per month. And most times, here's the answer, and their answer is, well, that's how they all are. Like, what do you mean? Like, if I leave one big high-end firm I'm making up city, Chicago, and go to one in New York, like, they're all going to be the same. And that's when I'm like, no, they're not all the same. So that's, I think, a big thing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And listen, I want to have fun when I go to work every day.
Right.
Like, that's what makes it not work. Like, I am blessed to love what I do every day.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, listen, as we're wrapping up, how can people reach you if they don't know you already, or they have a question, or they about anything at all? Is it a website? Is it an email? Is it LinkedIn? Tell us how to reach you.
So yeah, all of the above. So our website is mzqconsulting.com, and I have a blog there that I publish with my partner in crime, Jessica Waltman. And we've got all sorts of information about MZQ there. Find us on LinkedIn. You can feel free to email me directly if you're looking for me. I am Jen, Jen, at mzqconsulting.com. Not to be confused with either of the other two Jens in senior leadership.
You guys do love hiring your Jens. They have a thing over at MZQ. They only hire Jens.
I have a Jessica.
You have a Jessica.
I have a Jessica. But it is true. So I'm going to do a brief Jen primer. Just give me 2 seconds. I'm Jen Berman. It's really fun talking to you today. We have a Jen Latour. She handles all of our business development, retention. She's there to help in every way that she can. And then we have a Jennifer Everhart who runs our operations. And listen, I cannot help it if all of the best women from the late 70s and early 80s were named Jennifer.
That's right.
If you were born in the late 70s or early 80s and your name is not Jennifer, we love you too.
Truer words have never been spoken. Everybody go change your name to Jennifer. That's 100% accurate. And I got to meet more Jens. I haven't met Jennifer Everhart yet, so soon. Listen, everybody, I appreciate you listening. This has been a lot of fun. I appreciate you coming on here, Jen Berman. Look, I always say it because it's true. I just show up and ask some questions and sit back and listen. I'm not a producer. I'm not a tech person. So I have a whole back office that helps me put this together. Without them, I'd be nothing. No different than without your team, you'd be nothing. I mean, we can admit that. So for everybody behind the scenes at the Rockstars Rockin' podcast, I'm Eric Silverman. This is Jen Berman, and you have just listened to another episode of Rockstars Rockin'. Stay tuned for next week where we will have, another rock star who no doubt is rocking. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of the Rockstars Rocking podcast. If you haven't done so already, make sure you're subscribed to the show wherever you consume podcasts. And if you feel so inclined, please leave us a review. 5 stars would totally rock. Until next time, Rockstars, keep rocking.